Hi, this is John again. This is a continuation of my road test for the TI-RSLK, the Robot System Learning Kit. This time I'm in Lab 13. And in Lab 13, what they have you do is you're using timers um, to both control the PWM for the motors to get them to turn, as well as to check the bumper switches to see if any switch has been pressed. And then use that combination of the bumpers and then to control whether the robot stops and then moves. The way it was coded or way it was described was when a bumper hits, it stops, and that's it. So I've done this a little bit differently. I've implemented to where it'll go forward, you hit a bumper, it'll stop, and then it'll go backwards, left, right, or just left, right. To me, that seemed to make more sense. If I can, I'll try to get this on some sort of obstacle course to give a better indication of how it's running, but I think this will give a pretty good impression of it. So you had a main, you had to create to go and to recognize this stuff. So it goes and controls the motors, and then it's every time that the timer ticks off, timer 1 is being used here, timer A1 is being used for the bumper switches, and then A0 is actually used for the motor for the PWM. So it's set up as a periodic timer for the bumper switches. It just goes and reads them, and I set a global variable basically, and then go from there. And then the motors are set up. See, so we go up here. The way they're set up, the direction is controlled by 1.7 for left, and then the PWM's 2.7, and then the 6s, the 2, 3, and 1 are set up for the right motor. And then this one we didn't initialize the 2, so it's using a timer instead of the brute force PWM that we had done previously. And then the PWM is set up with a timer, and then it's using the TA0, and then you initialize that, and then you set up the duty cycle. So when it moves, you pass in the duty cycle to this, a period, and the duty for the left and the right. This is in a init for the 3-4. The 3-4 is in relation to 2 and 6, which are for the motors, for the left-right motors. And then the 1A you have set up, and it calls a task, and the 1A task is basically just it's set up to a init, and then it's calling a task, and what it's getting passed is a task that basically reads bumpers. So this was another part of it. You just had to initialize this, very similar to timer A0 that I did with the PWM, with some changes because the frequency is a little bit different, and the setup for that. So I've already loaded this in, so I can go ahead and turn this on. And then I've set to where it requires a button press for it to go. So it goes forward, and then if we hit a button, it'll stop and then turn. So these are the right buttons, so it should turn right. And then the left buttons, it should turn left. And if we hit both these, it turns purple, and then it should go backwards and then forward again. So that's basically the end result of this. You go play around. If it was on an obstacle course, and you could see better how it's set up, I'll go ahead and turn this off, and then you can see how it's running. And so this is one more. So I got 14. That'll be end of the basic for the basic kit, and then from that it'll be the advanced kit. So I don't think they have another instance of using the IR sensor, which is kind of odd. I think the next one actually uses the bumper switches, but I think I'm going to try to change that to where I'm using the IR sensors, because it didn't make sense to have both. But yeah, it's been one of the oddities with this, but so far it's been pretty cool, and we'll see what happens, and we'll get this thing rolling on the ground here soon. Thanks.